You see, in this understanding where the vacuum is the source of creation, matter creation didn't just happen in one big bang, so long ago, but it actually is occurring all the time. Matter is being produced all the time in our universe.
I'm a theoretical physicist, and I like to say that I walk in the footsteps of giants like Albert Einstein and Niels Bohr. I'm not a philosopher. However, I am rather dazzled by the fact that many of the basic mysteries that we find in string theory and the theory of everything seem to be mirrored in the Zohar and in the Kabbalah.
As a scholar, the most amazing thing of all is the degree to which modern astrophysics sounds like a Kabbalistic text.
This is why we are expanding and accelerating. Our universe is accelerating this constant matter production because the universe is constantly learning. So there's constant new information occurring everywhere all the time.
Quantum physics has revealed what ancient masters knew. Matter does not exist.
Science's founding ideology, as well as its metaphysics, goes back to Galileo. Galileo decided that the universe was composed of discrete objects, mechanically related to each other. He supposed that mathematics was adequate to the job of describing this objective mechanical universe. Now, this is science's founding dogma, as well as its metaphysics. It's always been Pythagorean in the sense that it is assumed sleeping within or behind reality is the music of numbers. Now, in short, being can be calculated. The universe itself speaks calculus. The more likely possibility that math is just a language, a system of symbols, and that even the most basic equations like Newtonian gravity are mathematical idealizations. This is deeply offensive to many scientists.
The fact of the matter is that the substance of the universe is consciousness.
At the beginning of the video, I put a little quote saying how it is hard indeed to notice anything for which the language is available to us at no description. I put that up there simply because I asked myself before I made this video, how can I show them the wisdom and knowledge of Kabbalah? The only way I know how to do it is to simply show you what it's shown me, and in doing so, seeing if you can see the connections to infinity.
There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter.
If you were asked to point at something in the universe that connects all things, what would you point at? What would it be? If you had all the universe, everything you see, and I asked you, find me something that connects all things, because you hear that a lot in the spiritual world, and you know, from masters that in ancient times and so on, that everything is one, right? But how? If you don't tell me how, then it's just a concept. It's just a dogma. You got to tell me, how is that possible that everything is connected? Like, you got to explain that to me.
Consciousness.
Well, that if you say consciousness, you haven't explained anything, because probably every person in this room has a different definition of consciousness. So, what would it be? Space. Very good. Very good. Space is everywhere. It's between galaxies, it's between universes most likely. It's between stars, it's between planets. And at the atomic level, the space is extremely high. Atomic structure, all of your reality is built out of 99.9999999% space. So everything you say is so solid, is so real, that you think of as your reality is actually mostly space. And it's oscillating, and the oscillations interact, and did you know that you actually haven't touched anything at any time, anywhere? Nothing touches? Nothing? The densest atom is like, a molecule is a, diamond molecule. If you grew one of the atom in that molecule, the other one would be 2 football fields away. If the one you grew was the size of an orange. That's how much space there is in between them, and then the space inside the atom is 99.99999%. So maybe we should pay attention to the largest percentage instead of the smallest percentage. We spend a lot of time paying attention to the 0.0000001% that we call matter, and we spend very little time paying attention and trying to understand the 99.9999999% of the space. So maybe instead of matter defining the space, maybe it's space that defines matter. And I start to realize that. Do you all following me? This is a fundamental change in consciousness to actually go in the world and first of all realize that you're mostly space, and that maybe the space is defining you, and instead of you defining it. There is a simple geometric solution to the riddle. So in a simple geometric solution here, I'm going to prove to you that infinities and finite system are absolutely related. Actually, one cannot exist without the other. And so we'll make a boundary we'll call it a finite boundary. This is a circle, and it encloses a certain volume, right? It could be a sphere in the space, so don't reduce it necessarily to a circle. And then inside it, we're going to put an equilateral triangle. Now that triangle in a sphere could be a tetrahedron. Everybody knows what a tetrahedron is? It's one of these, right? And we can polarize that tetrahedron because the universe has spin. Things spins in the universe, and when they spin, there's polarity. So it's okay, you can polarize it. So you can polarize the triangle. And interestingly, right away, you got an ancient symbol that you can find in many, many different cultures all around the world, although it's best known by the Jewish culture as the Star of David or the Star of Zion. Well, if you look carefully, you find that as soon as I polarized the first tetrahedron, I created new boundaries that have the exact same geometry that I started with. Except these boundaries are one step smaller, right? They're one gradient or one iteration smaller. Well, what's important to remember here that each of these boundaries define a very specific center, right? Like this boundary here this is its center and this is its center, and all of the centers are all different from all other centers. That means that each of the boundary, although they are part of a similar geometry that is interactive with each other, meaning one cannot exist without the other ones, they all have their own very specific coordinates in space-time, and they observe the rest of the fractal structure from its own very specific point of view that no other boundary in the system has. You all following this? It's an important point. Now, you can polarize those and you'll get smaller boundaries again. And again, each one is a very individual boundary. And you polarize those, you get smaller ones, and you can go to infinity doing that.
So you hear a lot of people are really freaked out about this idea, this meme of the singularity. Some call it the rapture of the nerds. They feel like technologists have hijacked the Christian story of God and heaven and the afterlife and just translated it into the language of electronic technology and synthetic intelligence and mastering the information processes of biology so that we can engender and engineer our own godhood. But I don't really think that that's a problem. I mean, those religious myths that we have been caught up in for centuries reflect our yearnings to transcend our own limits. As Ernest Becker says, we are gods with anuses. With our minds we can ponder the infinite, yet we're housed in these heart-pumping, breath-gasping, decaying body. So to be godly yet creaturely sort of imbues the human condition with a sort of bittersweet, sort of exquisite pain quality to it that sort of in a way drives our creativity. Our desire to transcend all previous limits, to transform the world in our own image comes from our desire to escape the death sentence that makes us ultimately food for worms. So I think that the singularity as a meme that reflects the sort of acceleration of the human design process to the point of achieving a kind of infinite velocity where everything becomes linked with everything else and matter becomes mind, where we impregnate the universe with intelligence, as Eric Davis has written. Today technologists are these ecstatic technicians of the sacred. They're figuring out how awareness works, how the self emerges. Can we create non-biological intelligence? Can we create sentience in a different substrate that is not bound by the limits of biology? If we are the frontal lobes of the universe, if we are the eyes and ears of the universe, if we are a way for the cosmos to know itself, as Carl Sagan says, then our desire to transcend all previous limits is the universe's desires therein. So I don't think there's anything unnatural about that. And so for that reason, I think the idea of the singularity is awesome.
When you look at this symbol, you immediately see it's composed of two aspects. One is this lazy 8, or the infinity symbol, and the other is the red pyramid at the top. The infinity symbol is the equation for the physical world we live in. It's a circuit or a pathway of motion. 6 numbers that form a hexagon. Thus, such diverse phenomena as light polarizing, beehives, Saturn's North Pole, and snowflakes are all versions of this hexagon. These shapes form pathways for any matter in motion, which is never straight, but always at an angle. Nothing in the physical world ever moves in a straight line, not a bullet shooting, not lightning coming down out of the sky. Everything is a coil, even a photon coming from a distant star, proving relativity exists. Our body is called this mortal coil. Our DNA is a coil, and it's no coincidence that it matches our equation perfectly. It makes us into a vortex machine that sucks things in at the top and shoots them out at the bottom.
Our bodies are toroidal systems, our planet is a toroidal system, and all vortex energy works in this.
You could think of it as 8-star tetrahedrons. You see, 8-star tetrahedrons made out of 8 tetrahedrons each that are coming together. And you know, 8-star tetrahedrons, the tetrahedrons are pointing out. It's like the radiative side coming together to produce the collapsing vectors of the vector equilibrium. So the 8 tetrahedrons of the vector equilibriums pointing in. So I had both sides of the equation in the structure of the metric. It all kind of came together in this beautiful way. And I thought, that's it. This has got to be the geometry of the vacuum. The other thing is that it grows in perfect octave, like musical notes.
Moving on from this, the next person to explore this field was a gentleman called Hans Jenny in the 1970s, and he actually coined the term cymatics. We can also use cymatics for healing and education. This is an installation developed with school children where their hands are tracked, and it allows them to control and position cymatic patterns and the reflections that are caused by them. We can also use cymatics as a beautiful natural art form. This image here is created from a snippet of Beethoven's 9th Symphony playing through a cymatic device. So it kind of flips things on its head a little bit. And this is Pink Floyd's Machine playing in real time through the cymatic. We can also use cymatics as a looking glass into nature, and we can actually recreate the archetypal forms of nature. So for example, here on the left we can see a snowflake as it would appear in nature, and then on the right we can see a cymatically created snowflake. And here's a starfish and a cymatic starfish, and there's thousands of these. So what does this all mean? Perhaps cymatics had an influence on the formation of the universe itself. And here's some eye candy for you from a range of DIY scientists and artists from all over the globe. And cymatics is accessible to everybody, and I want to urge everybody here to apply your passion, your knowledge, and your skills to areas like cymatics. And I think
What has been referred to as the 0-point energy, sometimes referred to as free energy, and already the evidence and traces of that exist in very simple home-built technology.
So if I had this program running on my computer, it could keep zooming in and making more boundary and zooming in and making more boundaries, and it would go to infinity. Like, as long as the computer was running, it would keep going. However, I would never, ever, ever, ever escape or exceed the first boundary I've made for myself. So within the context of a finite space, I've embedded infinite amount of information, infinite amount of divisions. That means that if this is true, and you know, if it's geometrically true, and if it's mathematically true, then it most likely is true. You could take the boundary of any of your atoms, or the boundary of your cells, and divide them and divide them and divide it to infinity, meaning that you have an infinite amount of information, an infinite amount of divisions within yourself. So all of a sudden, you're starting to have a mechanical and mathematical understanding of the infinite nature of your existence. It's no longer just a metaphysical concept, It's no longer a belief or a dogma, it's actually a mathematical equation.
In the closing of this video, I want to once again leave you with a very important, very mystical, and deeply embedded excerpt from a book. This book was passed along to me by a fellow friend who thought it would spark my interest, and the excerpts I'm giving you are regarding first-person pronouns to create self-referential sentences. Now, this construction yields a ubiquitous mathematical formula, not an English sentence, creating an endless series of true but unimprovable formulas, but can be constructed by the technique of self-reference, revealing that somehow the full power of human mathematical reasoning eludes capture in the cage of rigor. If one pursues this idea, one finds that it leads into a vast space. It was thought to spark my interest and passed along to me, and all I can tell you is that the implications I connected were astonishing. Now I leave them with you in hopes that you will see the connections and, in time, pass them along to someone else who is searching. Here are the excerpts. I am not the subject of this sentence. I am jealous of the first word in this sentence. Well, how about that? This sentence is about me. I am simultaneously writing and being written. I am the meaning of this sentence. I am the thought you are now thinking. I am thinking about myself right now. I am the set of neural firings taking place in your brain as you read the set of letters in this sentence and think about me. This inert sentence is my body, but my soul is alive, dancing in the sparks of your brain. You are under my control because I am choosing exactly what words you are made out of and in what order. No, you are under my control because you will read until you have reached the end of me. Hey, down there, are you the sentence I am writing or the sentence I am reading? And you up there, are you the person writing me or the person reading me? You and I, alas, can only have one-way communication, for you are the person and a mere sentence. As long as you are not reading me, the fourth word of this sentence has no referent. The reader of this sentence exists only while reading me. Hey out there, is that you reading me or is it someone else? Say, haven't you written me somewhere else before? Say, haven't I written you somewhere else before? This sentence is not self-referential because that is not a word. No language can express every thought unambiguously, least of all this one. If this sentence didn't exist, somebody would have invented it. If I had finished this sentence, if there were no counterfactuals, this sentence would not be paradoxical. If wishes were horses, an antecedent of this conditional would be true. If this sentence were false, beggars would ride. What would this sentence be like if it were not self-referential? What would this sentence be like if it were three? If the subjunctive was no longer in English, this sentence would be grammatical. This sentence would be 7 words long if it were 6 words shorter. This point is well taken. You may quote me. I am going to level with you. I have been sentenced to death. This prophecy will come true. This sentence will end before you can say, Jack Rob. Oh, please publish me in your collection of self-referential sentences.
End excerpt. Namaste.